I'll never forget the cold stare of my mother-in-law, the muffled laughter of my sisters-in-law, and my wife's cowardly silence. I stood there in front of a lavish table with no seat for me, the invited guest who was excluded. They thought that luxury was there just to remind me of my place. But they had no idea that tonight I would be the one to turn the game around. My name is David, I'm 35 years old, and this is how I reclaimed my dignity. I live in Orlando, and I'm an entrepreneur in the bar and restaurant business. Everything I have, I built with my own sweat, no famous last name, no inheritance. When my wife Lucy mentioned that her family wanted to have dinner at Bellissimo Gardens, an expensive restaurant downtown, I thought it would be a chance to show them I belonged in their circle. I spent the whole day preparing. I rescheduled an important meeting just to arrive on time. Dress shirt, perfectly pressed blazer, polished shoes. I wanted everything to be perfect. When I gave my name to the waiter, he looked at me confused. "I'm sorry, sir. There's no reservation under David." I tried my father-in-law's last name, Morrison. And then the blow came hard. "Oh yes, table for 6. They're all already seated." My heart froze. 6 people. I would be the 7th. The hostess discreetly pointed, and there they were. Lucy, her parents, and her 2 sisters, toasting as if life were a wine commercial. Before I could approach, I smelled the strong, cold perfume of Mrs. Catherine, my mother-in-law, appearing behind me. "Oh, David," she said in that fake tone. "You didn't really think you'd be invited, did you?" For a moment, the floor seemed to disappear beneath me. But instead of reacting, I took a deep breath. I already knew this type of humiliation. What she didn't know was that I had a trump card saved. I knew this would be the last time she'd make me feel small. I swallowed my pride like swallowing glass. The waiter, uncomfortable, offered me a seat at the bar. Catherine laughed, venomous. "That's more your style, don't you think?" But something in me changed at that second. I was tired of being the target of arrogance disguised as etiquette. I looked at the attendant and said calmly, "Do me a favor. Tell Mr. Marcus Williams that David is here." The young man hesitated. Catherine raised an eyebrow. "The owner?" she asked, mocking. "Exactly." She scoffed, already savoring the scene she thought was coming. But fate had other plans. A few minutes later, Marcus appeared. Dark suit, firm presence, a gaze that commanded the entire room. And when he saw me, he opened a wide smile. "David, man, it's been too long." He hugged me tight, like reuniting with a brother. The entire restaurant stopped. Catherine turned pale. "You know Mr. Williams?" she stammered. "I do," Marcus replied. "David was the one who helped me open my first bar. If it weren't for him, Bellissimo wouldn't even exist." The looks changed instantly. Lucy, silent at the table, finally met my eyes. There was guilt there, and a certain fear. Marcus ordered, "Bring a chair. This man is family here." I smiled serenely. "Thank you, Marcus." And for the first time, I saw Catherine swallow her own poison. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I was already the invisible owner of that table. When the waiter brought the extra chair and made space at the table, I felt all eyes weighing on me. Lucy looked away. The sisters tried to hide their discomfort, and Mrs. Catherine, well, she seemed to be chewing her own pride. The waiter addressed me as Mr. David and asked if I wanted to see the special house menu, the one reserved only for the most important clients. "Bring the wine from Marcus's private reserve," I requested calmly, and watched Catherine's jaw nearly touch her plate. "You have credit here," she whispered. "I have respect," I responded. The atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. The silence was heavy, but I wasn't in a hurry. I picked up my glass, looked at everyone, and said, "Interesting how life changes, isn't it? One moment you're the invisible guest, the next you're the one making the toast." Sarah, the younger sister, tried to lighten the mood. "So David, are you and Marcus really business partners?" I smiled. "More than that. We were partners in Bellissimo's first expansion. That $1 million renovation of the main dining room came from my consulting work." Lucy looked at me in disbelief. "You never told me this." "Not everything needs to be said," I replied without anger. The waiter returned with the wine bottle and placed it in front of me with a gesture of respect. Do you prefer the 2010 label or the 2012, sir? Before I could answer, Catherine murmured, "Either one will do." I leaned forward slightly, keeping my gaze steady. "It depends, Mrs. Catherine. Do you want a wine that pairs with hypocrisy or with regret?" The waiter disguised a smile, and right there, among expensive plates and anxious looks, I realized the dinner was no longer theirs. It was mine. The first sip of wine burned going down, not because of the drink, but because of the memory of all the times I swallowed offenses without responding. Now, each word was a settling of accounts. "You know, Catherine," I began, setting down the glass calmly, "I never talked about how much I helped this family." She raised an eyebrow with that look of disdain I knew so well. "Help us." I smiled. "Your son-in-law, Mr. Robert. Remember that investment that saved his company 3 years ago? That mysterious capital injection?" Silence took over the table. "Well, it was me who covered the deficit. Without me, Morrison Investments would have closed." Sarah's eyes widened. Lucy brought her hand to her mouth. "Is this true?" she whispered. "Completely." Catherine tried to laugh. "Oh, please. You wouldn't have that kind of money." I leaned in, looking firmly into her eyes. "You're right, ma'am. At the time, I didn't have it. But I worked double shifts, sold shares, invested correctly. While you saw me as the family's errand boy, I was building the foundation that supported your castle." The impact was immediate. Even the waiter stopped serving. Lucy lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "And there's more," I continued. "When you thought your daughter managed to open that boutique on her own, who reviewed the contracts, signed the papers, and guaranteed the loan, the same person you humiliated today." The air became heavy. Catherine gripped her silverware tightly. "You should have stayed in your place," she murmured. "I did," I responded, "until Mr. Marcus reminded me that my place has always been wherever I choose to be." With each sentence, her mask shattered. And at that dinner, between glasses and secrets, the truth was finally served cold, elegant, and impossible to swallow. The silence at that table was deafening. Only the sound of Catherine's silverware hitting the plate betrayed the discomfort. Lucy couldn't look at me. She seemed to be trying to disappear, as if the napkin in her hands could erase her from there. I, on the other hand, was at peace. For the first time, I wasn't the man trying to prove his worth. I was the man showing how much they had underestimated me. "Raphael, this doesn't change anything," Catherine finally said, trying to recover her composure. "Money doesn't buy class." I smiled. "But it pays the bills for your upper-middle-class lifestyle, doesn't it?" She remained motionless. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone, Mrs. Catherine. I just want you to understand what you've always pretended not to see." I turned to Lucy. "And you? You knew all of this, but you chose silence." She tried to defend herself. "I just wanted to avoid conflicts." I shook my head. "And you succeeded. You avoided so much conflict that you lost me in the process." Sarah looked at me hesitantly. "David, are you really leaving?" I took a deep breath. "Not today, but soon. Sometimes you need to leave to hear yourself again." The phrase fell like a sentence. Catherine grumbled something about ingratitude, but even she didn't believe what she was saying. The waiter brought dessert, and nobody touched it. I observed the shine of the silver utensils, reflecting the soft light of the dining room, that same room I had helped build with my own hands. I raised my glass, looked at each of them, and said, "Here's to the truth that always appears, even when they try to hide it under expensive dishes." And I drank in silence. It was the toast to my new beginning. When dinner ended, I stood up slowly, like someone closing a cycle. "David, wait," Lucy pleaded, but I didn't stop. With each step, the sound of the restaurant seemed to fade away along with that old version of myself. Catherine still tried to keep her voice firm. "You're going to regret this." I looked over my shoulder. "No, Mrs. Catherine. I only regret taking so long." I left Bellissimo, and the night air seemed lighter, almost new. I walked to the parking lot and saw my car reflecting the city lights. Inside it, silence. The kind of silence that doesn't weigh you down, that liberates you. I drove home thinking about everything I had endured for love, and how love without respect is just a disguised prison. When I arrived, The house was dark, smelling of lavender, the scent she loved so much. I grabbed my suitcase from the closet and started packing clothes, documents, laptop. No anger, no rush, just certainty. When I finished, I sat on the couch and waited. It was almost 10 at night when I heard the key turn. Lucy came in exhausted, her eyes watery. "David, don't do this. We can work it out." I stood up calmly. "We could if you had defended me today, but you chose to stay silent." She tried to approach, but I took a step back. I spent years supporting this family without being seen. Today, for the first time, I was acknowledged, just not by you. I grabbed my suitcase, walked to the door, and looked back one last time. "Goodbye, Lucy. Now I'm going to dine with my own peace." And I left, leaving behind not just a house, but a story that had finally ended. The sun was rising when I parked the car in front of a new building, a place few people knew about, but that represented everything I had built away from the spotlight. The doorman smiled when he saw me. "Mr. David, the keys are ready." I took the iron keychain and slowly went up to the top floor. When the door opened, the fresh air from the balcony embraced me. Outside, the city was still waking up, but inside me, the storm had already passed. That silence wasn't empty, it was freedom. I put coffee on the table, opened my laptop, and saw Marcus's message. "Ready for our new partnership?" I smiled. Ready as ever. Life had given me the stage they tried to deny. I looked out the window and remembered each disguised humiliation, each condescending smile, each time I accepted the minimum for love. But now I was the man who rebuilt his own destiny with firm hands and a clean heart. I picked up my phone and saw dozens of missed messages, calls from Lucy, attempts from Sarah, late apologies. I blocked them one by one, not out of revenge, but for peace. They had taught me the value of silence, and now I would use it as a shield. That morning, Marcus arrived with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "To new beginnings," he said. We toasted. The golden liquid reflected the sunrise, as if the entire universe was telling me I was finally in the right place. "You won, David," he commented. I shook my head. "I didn't win against anyone, Marcus. I just stopped losing myself." And in that instant, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Lightness. From the height of that new beginning, I realized that true power isn't in proving anything to anyone, but in living with a clear conscience of someone who knows their own worth. Because sometimes, to find your own voice again, you need to get up from a table and build a new one. 6 months passed like a breath of freedom. The new restaurant Marcus and I opened became the talk of Orlando. Every night, the place was packed with people who appreciated authenticity, not pretension. I learned that respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And more importantly, I learned that walking away from toxicity isn't weakness, it's the bravest form of self-love. One evening, while reviewing the books in my office, I smiled at my reflection in the window. The man looking back at me was finally whole, no longer fragmented by the need for approval from people who never truly valued him. 2 years later, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, watching Orlando's lights twinkle like earthbound stars. Marcus and I had expanded to 3 locations, each one more successful than the last. I had found peace in solitude and strength in independence. Last week, I received a letter from Lucy. She had divorced, moved to another state, and written to apologize. I read it once, felt nothing but indifference, and filed it away. Some chapters closed completely, and that's okay. Sarah reached out too, wanting to reconnect. We met for coffee, and I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. Sometimes people grow, and forgiveness becomes possible, not for them, but for yourself. As for Catherine, I heard she still dines at Bellissimo occasionally. Marcus tells me she never sits at that same table anymore. Today, I'm engaged to Amanda, a kind woman who sees me for who I am, not what I can provide. She teaches art, laughs freely, and never makes me feel small. Standing here now, coffee in hand, new love beside me, I finally understand. My peace was always worth more than their approval. And I've never been happier. This is my story of triumph. Do you think I handled it correctly? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your perspective. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to Memorable Stories in Overcoming, where we share inspiring stories of triumph and justice every single day.